Welcome to the My Rules Are Better podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Last Sunday evening, I had recorded a 15-minute long My Rules Are Better, just about to do post-production on it, when a cat that we own, a cat that owns us, a cat that we have cohabited with for more than about 15 years now, disappeared a week or so before the recording of the podcast. So literally, as I was coming to do the production on the podcast, the post-production, after I've done all the leveling and what have you, I received a call that the cat had been found. And as I'd referenced the cat going missing as being part of my sleep-deprived and otherwise hellish week in the recording, I thought, well, a lot of this recording is now null and void. Well, not necessarily a lot of the recording, but probably about 2 minutes worth of recording. And I thought I probably need to get some sleep, reflect a little bit more on the things that are making me happy in this world. Yes, it's a small list, but there are a few. And just, put out a better podcast, basically, because the previous one was not necessarily mired by lack of sleep and general existential gloom. But yeah, I just thought, look, there's going to come a time, and I'll record a My Rules Are Better for the listening audience. And Saturday morning, today, that is the time. So much has gone on since the last recording. So much has gone on, and I don't even know. I mean, I've got a list of notes here. That's how much has gone on since the last recording. I wanted to start by saying that Barney Dicker invited me to a game. I attended a game with him now 3 weeks ago, I think, which just indicates how long it's been since I last put out a recording. And I've appeared on Barney's Loco Ludus podcast to talk a little bit about the game. But in summary here, you see, this was the thing that captured me in sleep deprivation in the last recording. Let me just say in summary here, I don't think Barney's taken seriously my feedback, and I don't think Barney's taken seriously Spencer's feedback. And he's kind of wrapped it into this beautiful thing with a little bow, where basically at the end of it he says, everything that happened in the game could have been outside the realm of magic. It's just like, okay, that's an interesting way of caveating what our general experiences were. That was my experience. My view is that Barney is going to come to some realization associated with where he would like magic to be in this game, and I hope everyone else who plays or masters the game or whatever runs the game has their own perspective of magic and ideally dials it down a little bit from Barney's perspective. But yeah, it was kind of curious that, well, it's not a 2-to-1 ratio at all. Two of the players had very specific views, myself included, associated with the fact that magic overstepped the bound. And the one magic user in the game was like, no, this is perfectly fine. Absolutely fine. But he's like, yes, I agree with the minority here. Absolutely fine. So anyway, I should probably not narrate too much of this stuff, aside from saying that the one thing that came out of the game was the sense that I needed to run a game of alluvial plains. And I think I need to do that for a number of reasons. I mean, mainly my feeling was just, I think it's a rule system which is sufficiently minimalist to still fit in with my gaming philosophies. I also have a very old book written by a fellow called William Buckland. He was a theologian amongst other things. He did a wide variety of things. Just a regular early, 19th century polymath. He was like a generation before Darwin. So he found some human bones and some mammoth bones in a cave together in south of Wales. And this is the basis of the book that I own. Now, I have both the original copy, like the first edition, and also a modern reprint, so I can thumb through the modern reprint. But actually, very little of this is to do with The Hunt, which is the game that I'm running. It's supposed to be a single-session game. It's going to be very, very interesting. I think I'm actually going to, give blocks of information to people early on, and that is probably going to be one of the things I work on this weekend. But it's the idea of not even a tribe, just a group of families, where the previous hunt, which was about 5 years previous, basically devastated the families. The male adult leadership of the families all went on the hunt and all disappeared. So that's the origins of the game. There's some inter-family politics as well. But the main aspect of it is that there are at least 4 monstrous creatures and at least 4 more, we were talking about species, of just multiple times the size of human creatures out there in this environment. I just thought it was a really interesting, practical nature of the people at the time that they had to deal with these creatures that could just absolutely cause all kinds of havoc. But even more curiously, the more that I go through this space in terms of my own thinking, the miraculous nature of actually slaying one of these monstrous creatures through any means is just something that's captivating me. I'm looking at various methods of hunting these creatures, and in particular trying to look at the historical, well, there are no historical records, but just some kind of description associated with, where bones had cutting marks and this kind of stuff. And you look at just the scale of these creatures versus a humanoid, and it just boggles the mind. So anyway, I'm going to explore that through the hunt. I think I've said enough about the hunt at this stage. The lead pile has been, well, I've received the second last parcel from the east coast of the lead pile. It was a parcel that was so big, I normally take an evening to repack, and this one I just, after about an hour and a half, just said, okay, I've still got a box to repack, and I can't repack it. It was probably the quintessential group of miniatures where I just thought, I'm not really interested in the majority of this. There's a small number of goblins, a small number of, there's the Dad's Army home guard in there. But aside from that, it's the Union American Civil War Winter Army, and it's a bunch of Indian Wars kind of combination, French Canadians, Americans, Indians, British, all kinds of crazy stuff. So none of these really tick my boxes. The final package is all, not the final package that I was yet to unwrap, but the final package that's coming from this painter is all Second World War, 28mm and 20mm with vehicles. And that I'm looking forward to actually receiving. But the cost associated with this, so the thing that I received most recently, in cost terms, is about 10 weeks of Roachwood's work in the UK. And 10 weeks of Roachwood's work in the UK would be a similar volume, I think, maybe slightly more in terms of volume, but it just has this amazing stuff that Roach is currently putting out, which I post on Facebook and the My Rules Are Better Facebook page as well. So just the money, the value just doesn't seem to be there for what I have currently. This was more just like I've got to get the lead out to be painted kind of, I don't know what one would call it. I mean, just something that happened 2 odd years ago that's just coming back to haunt me. So the fact that I have literally a case worth of American Civil War and Indian Wars stuff that I have to repack now, it's just like, ugh. I'll probably get to it sometime this weekend. I've got to get it done. At the conclusion of my discussion with Barney Dicker on his Loco Ludus podcast, after the mics were off and we'd said goodbye to one another, as we do formally, we'd usually have a chat. And my big news, which I don't know if it's actually made anything in the public domain yet, because I'm yet to edit the model rail radio or the couple of model rail radios where it's discussed explicitly, is sometime between March and May next year, my wife and I are going to be having twin girls. And what that means for me in terms of time, location, all these kind of things. So the Vegas move was supposed to be moving into our house in Las Vegas, but our house was trashed by the tenant who stopped paying rent in March, right? So my wife and I looked at just the 5 minutes worth of video footage after the sheriffs had gone into the house and just realized this thing, we've got to just get rid of this. We don't want to set foot on this property ever again. It's brutalized beyond description. Let's just move on. So we're putting that house on the market, and according to our realtor in the area, it will sell very quickly. And then we're buying another house in Las Vegas that we can move into and take the twin girls and, live out a few months of our lives just getting adjusted to having twin girls. And then in terms of my 7:30 to 6:30, I'm taking some time off that, obviously. And I don't know, the anticipation is a few months after I take time off that, I'll return to work. And then periodically, I guess I'll return to podcasting. Model Rail Radio, the folks have agreed to record audio and submit it. With My Rules Are Better, I think it'll just be quiet for a few months while I learn to speak again and do other things. It was interesting when I spoke to Barney Dicker about this specifically. He said, well, you've got to do this, and this. You've got to get out the Just Plain Chaos rules and forget that whole sea lion thing. Put that sea lion thing aside. You just, Barney Dicker is my agent. It's a beautiful thing. I said to him, no. I said, firstly, the evolution of this thing, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes, is beyond, understanding remotely. You can't understand, the nature of my sleep patterns and my working patterns, particularly with regards to software versus written text, which a lot of this has got to do with. I said, look, I don't even think I said this to him out loud, but I have a block of text for Just Plain Chaos, which is the actual background book behind it, which is probably about 200, maybe 100 hours away from completion. So my view would be to get that out first, then to get out the scenario book, which I don't know how long is away from completion, but certainly more time than I can amass between now and March next year. And then just periodically kind of add to this. I have a very strong sense of the nature of what one does after hours versus the nature of what one does for one's job. And this allows me to have a huge amount of slack in the stuff that I do after hours and still feel perfectly comfortable with it. I first wrote about this in 2004 in IEEE Computer Graphics and Applications. That's an academic, well, it's an engineering text. Anyway. And I just said that you've got to plan these projects 5, 10, 25 years in advance. It's just the nature of, the way I project my life with a view. One hopes to be on the rock in 25 years' time, but, you've just got to project in the future like this because otherwise you're going to be very frustrated when you're just completely burnt out. So my perspective on this thing is that these things are going to continue on. And I still have the it's not yet unnamed rule system. It's the rule system that, I've yet to put out in any formality associated with the kind of dark ages. So anyway, my view is that what happens in sometime between March and May, clearly incredibly life-changing, and no doubt in my voice timbre alone, you'll hear the difference when this thing occurs. But yeah, it's something where I can't force myself to do after-hours work leading up to this momentous event, and I just need to be comfortable with that fact. And I've got a lifetime of being comfortable with that kind of stuff. So let's talk about the sea lion in the room. This thing has become now... There are many different stages to this project. The current stage of the project is taking existing maps and translating them into vector maps, which means taking existing maps and then rewriting them in this primitive, vector language JSON, which is JSON. It's being utilized here as a vector language. And then recreating these maps and comparing them to the original maps to see if it's right, basically, if it's comparable. The part of it that I'm at currently is associated with building a single-use rendering engine. So literally taking the written map information that I've created, doing a rendered map output of that and putting that next to the existing map or overlaying that on the existing map. And that's where I'm at with this project currently. It's not a project that really can be forced. It's a project that has taken already a lot of time and will take a lot of time more. But I think what you get out of this is a quality, and the quality of the data, I think, is really very important, even as used in a gaming sense, like a tabletop gaming sense. I think the quality of the data is incredibly important. I'm starting with a town called Ashford, which is in Kent, and I'm just doing the rendering and modelling around that initially to see if it plays out well in Ashford. It'll play out well in, Canterbury. It'll play out well in Folkestone. It'll play out well in, hopefully, London. So that's the direction that is taking. And it's really the time of my awake life where I'm kind of non-linguistic. This is where I'm working on it currently. So hopefully that will make some sense to some of you. But yeah, it is something that I think, if it's done to a certain quality, will engage people. And my thought is, I've been watching a lot of Twitch streaming. My thought is that it'll come to a stage where I can actually Twitch stream some of this, which will get an audience, which I wouldn't necessarily get through YouTube or just, podcasts or general conversation. And I think that's incredibly important. Now, you may wonder, well, what happens to Just Plain Chaos? Does it become what's the computer simulation aspect of this? Well, there isn't any currently. Sea Lion is the computer simulation aspect of this. And part of it is just to get better insights. The written history, in particular kinds of Dad's Army histories that came out well after the fact, just don't give the kind of day-to-day practical insight. And it's interesting because I've kind of generated an after-hours career of gaining insight through simulation, which one day, no doubt, Barney Dicker and I will have a conversation about. And in addition to this, I've talked a little bit about the hunt. I talked a little bit about the lead pile. I think if I was to reflect on the past year, in particular, bringing the attic down, consolidating, looking at what I find is important, and then discarding a good portion of the remainder, it's something that still sticks with me, that I think my identity as a participant, both an active player, a rules, creator, and analyzer, what have you, all these various components have been refined in the past year, and they've been refined in the past year fundamentally through physical stuff going through my hands. Me holding stuff, looking at stuff, and realizing this stuff isn't really important for me. And in the video YouTube complement to this particular podcast, I talk quite heavily about not buying any further rules and realizing that the miniatures are one thing. Even within the miniatures, the lead pile has dictated to me, and I've got to stop buying these things. Unless they're absolutely beautiful and created by Kev Adams. I think they're the two caveats. But aside from that, I've got enough miniatures. I don't need any more. Occasional Kev Adams stuff aside. And really, the rewards that I'm getting currently, I think about this with regards to Rochi Rochford, and this is something I reflect on quite a bit, that the Rochi Rochford interaction is even probably better than the Fred Reed interaction was more than a decade ago, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And the relationship that I have with a painter over a long period of time, painting, some of my stuff, is genuinely important to me. It's probably the closest thing to kind of day-to-day friendship that I would generally experience. And it is really funny because you're effectively paying this person to communicate with you, but at the same point create this stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know where I sit with regards to it. I think sometime through next year, the Rochi commissions are just going to dry up. I think there's a finite amount of lead and he's going through it at some speed. And then my whole representation with this thing, this gaming thing, will be, probably completely and utterly rewritten through having twin daughters. I think the aspects of play, adventure, rule systems, light rule systems, these aren't the, 0 to 3 or 4 years of age thing, although 4, you're getting there. But yeah, I think it's interesting just seeing, rather than seeing through, reading or observation or these kind of things, seeing through practical entities in front of me, I think is going to open up, completely different and unchanneled thinking. That's my hope anyway, that this will provide some degree of fascination. And through that, something that I've kind of lamented when I've talked to Matthew Gibson and Barney Dicker is the ability of utilizing another generation to understand these things. And having twin daughters in particular makes that a different proposition in many regards. My hope is that some small cultivation of history, some small interest in history might come through. And my wife points out that I pepper history into almost everything, just talk about historical, relevance of certain things. So, but, this is to be continued. This is to be found out. I have an active participant on Model Rail Radio who, when he first called in, lamented the fact that his daughters had banned him from talking about trains with his grandson. And then slowly but surely the grandson has kind of picked up trains anyway. But the whole nature of what experiences had his daughters had with the train hobby that made them so negative to actually say something like that up front? Like, were they dragged to train shows? Did they have these experiences that were... Or maybe it's more a social phenomena of just having a father that's interested in these things around peers. So this whole tapestry is fascinating me, but to be continued over a 3 to 5 year period. And I'm not a traditional game player. I don't have a lot of board games or these kind of things. The nature of games for me is considerably more cerebral, and when miniatures are involved, it gets more interesting. But, I do wonder what it's going to teach me. Anyway, somewhat calming, somewhat reflective, a good ending to this particular recording. I endeavour to record at least a couple more of these before we move to Las Vegas. We probably will be moving to Las Vegas now projected in a January-February timeframe. And I have at least the hunt to go through before we leave. So, Tom Barbalet, currently in San Jose, signing out.